Hello and welcome again to Capitol Report here on WCMU TV. This week we welcome back to our program Republican State Senator Ken Horn from Frankenmuth. After serving 3 terms in the House, he is in his first term with Michigan's 32nd Senate District. That is Saginaw County and the western portion of Genesee County. Thank you, Senator, for joining us once again.
Well, it's great to be back.
As we sit down today, Rick Pluta of the Michigan Public Radio Network has reported that the Michigan Supreme Court will hear arguments in a case that will have school districts, specifically those in Ann Arbor and Clio, near but not within your legislative district, against advocates who say that people should be allowed to carry firearms in schools. Obviously, the demonstrations are continuing following the Parkland, Florida incident and the investigation continuing following the shooting here on the CMU campus. The status of the legislative debate and action overall when it comes to concerns regarding school safety, where do we stand?
Specifically for the open carry that the court's going to be talking about, we have a bill that was written by the Senate Majority Leader, and he's in negotiation with the governor. Right now it passed the Senate, it's in the House. It would take away open carry and with additional concealed weapons training, from carrying weapons. But really it's the only trade-off, the only way to eliminate the open carry issue legislatively. Now the courts may decide a completely different path. So part of this is maybe waiting for the courts to decide. Following
Parkland and noting that they did have an armed guard who unfortunately did not enter the school to intervene in that incident, any calls from within your district from either the voters or the teachers on one side or the other when it would come to the idea or the thought given to teachers being allowed to have firearms, or perhaps ensuring that all districts would have armed guards on duty at the schools? What was the immediate reaction?
The reaction really has been, I think, muted, delayed. I think people were still trying to understand what was happening in Parkland, especially as reports came in that an armed guard stood outside for 2 or 3 minutes instead of entering the building. Information that the school was not providing disciplinary information to local law enforcement that could have prevented, the purchase of weapons. There are all the tips, more than several dozen tips that this young man would have been should have been considered dangerous, and he said so himself, and so a lot of people talking about it, but nobody really knows what the final solution is going to be. My town hall meetings generally we'll talk about them today, are kind of focused on roads, when are we going to fix them, auto insurance, education, mostly around skilled trades and careers, full careers. This last meeting that we had in Thomas Township at the library, there was a really good crowd, and we all had different answers for school safety. But that's what it narrowed down to is not gun control, not mental health, evaluations. It was about school safety and the overall impact. And I'm not sure any one solution is going to satisfy anybody. So we're still trying to, I think, come to grips with what really happened down there, and over a period of time, how do we make our schools safe? And so, for some people, it's like, here we're in on the CMU campus, a gun-free zone. The question is, do we feel safe in this studio if someone came barging in? And I don't know what response times would be, but how do you ensure safety? And it's a really tough question. I think it's going to be the question of our time.
Does law enforcement, in general, or specifically when we've seen incidents like this happen, and we hear about whether or not tips have been followed up upon adequately to potentially head off things like this happening, do they give you any feeling that they are adequately prepared and by that means, with the staff to follow up on tips of this nature, to have the best chance that they can to do their job in advance of potentially something like this happening?
I think here in Michigan, our law enforcement is very highly trained. They talk about this a lot. They work closely with school officials. And I think that they do act on tips very quickly here. Because I did a follow-up with our local law enforcement, and I feel comfortable that our schools in Michigan are safe. But for that random act, how do you deal with an active shooter, on a school campus, whether it be a college campus or a K through 12 school, and so I think that we really need to be vigilant. We really need to care about this, and I think we really need to involve parents. It's their kids that are at risk. They're sending them away to what they hope is a very safe environment, and it's my intent to keep those environments safe.
Another very emotional issue of late. Certainly, your chamber recently passed the legislation designed to provide more rights to victims of sexual assault. My guest last week, State Representative Vanessa Guerra, commenting on the issue as the bills were then going to be on their way to the House, noted maybe a potential concern over statute of limitations when it comes to the cases. Your comments on that and maybe overall reaction to what has at least initially passed the Senate.
The statute of limitations is lengthened out. We made some changes right at the end, talking to our colleagues and negotiating the final product that we sent out of the Senate and sitting over in the House now. Statute of limitations for minors now is 30 years. We know that the average young boy will be 38 years old before they, on average, before they say something, publicly. For girls, it's 41 years old. It takes them a long time, and they hold this in. That's not healthy. Number one. In the case of the Larry Nassar victims, they came out one at a time, and until they came out in mass. And people began believing them, and they ended up in the courts. It seems like they were betrayed by every level of government, every level of leadership. Their coaches, assistant coaches, counselors, teachers. We're all told at some point. The first person, Larissa, came out in 1997, I believe, and that's when the retroactivity on the civil side went back to 1997, which is when Larissa first made her announcement that something was wrong, and nobody believed her. And so our number one goal is to stop sexual assault. Then we take it a little bit farther in this series of 10 bills, and we say if you're an enabler and somebody comes to you and you don't say something, if you are a mandatory reporter, and we've created new mandatory reporters in here, professionals paid on staff, and if you say nothing, then you're responsible too. We make that very clear. And then we give the bills that I shared with Senator Margaret O'Brien, who took the lead on all of this, gave immunity in civil action, allowed, or not immunity, but anonymity, and it allowed victims to stay private longer, working through their attorneys, so that they felt safer for a longer period of time to be able to build a case. And I think that part of this is, will be reviewed by the court system. I'm sure that some of the institutions that are be paying out in the end for all the failings that they provided to these kids. They'll be slapping injunctions on some of the retroactivity. The courts will be deciding constitutionality, I have no doubt about that. But in other states around the country, Michigan was number 4, or fourth from the bottom, I should say, in in its laws protecting victims. We will lead the way now. And people should know that when they send their kids to a school, to an institution in the state of Michigan, that those kids will be safe. From this day forward, we learned a lot of lessons.
Work is underway, as we know, on the fiscal 2019 budget proposal from the governor. Picking up on some of the economic developments from our conversation when you were with us last season on the program, the My Thrive initiative was signed by the governor in mid-2017. What progress have we seen so far in your district and statewide so far?
Statewide, we're hearing rumblings that they're in my district that there's a project or two that we may be excited about soon. Statewide, we broke ground on a tower in Detroit. It'll be the tallest skyscraper between Chicago and New York. It'll have from my understanding of it, a glass observation deck, so you can see all of the great things that are happening down below in the city of Detroit. We've got inquiries from the community of Petoskey, from Lansing, from other places around the state, looking to take advantage of the incentive. Now, these are incentives. They're very tightly scripted. They are no threat to the general fund budget. They are restricted funds based on brownfields that are right now are sitting empty, or they have old warehouses on them or old factories that need to be torn down. We did see since then the implosion of the Pontiac Silverdome. Took a couple of tries, but they finally knocked her down. And so we're seeing, I think, good, positive economic growth in terms of our urban cores. I think people, young people especially, millennials, will be excited about new, vibrant places to live in Michigan. The Good Jobs package is already having people take a look at growth plans in Michigan. People are saying here, these jobs, then we found out, and we can talk about a bit about our trades and our CTE programs, our career development programs in Michigan. Amazon, too, looked at Detroit and rejected the idea of Michigan because we didn't have enough talent in the IT world. We need more software developers, more engineers in IT. It's the #1 job on our hot sheet right now. And we need young people to know that when they graduate from college that there are jobs here in Michigan, and there are, but we need them programs as they head in, whether it's a 4-year program or a program. It needs to be high school. Whatever they do, it has to have value for them. Money, training in an area that not happy with because they'll be changing careers, we know. And so we want to provide programs like career cruising for young people in middle school. I have a bill that passed out of my committee dealing with career or educational development plans for students. In 7th grade, every student is required to do an educational development plan, but that shouldn't be it. That should be reviewed every single year. Every experience that a student has in the workforce, in career exploration, should be taken into account in their plan, updated every year, so they know what classes to sign up for in the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. And so we're working with our educators, with business community, and we've finally gotten together. We've had some communications. It's hard to get business owners and educators together and speak the same language sometimes. Yeah. But business owners are saying, here's what we need, here's what we're looking for. And the schools have been asking for many years, what are you looking for? And we're finally getting together, and I think that's very exciting for Michigan.
You mentioned there can be demands that we are going to soon be seeing some very dramatic shortages for those types of jobs in Michigan. So when it comes to the people talking together, what what is the overall health of those kinds of programs if we look at your district as a snapshot or statewide of having those courses available or those added trainings, or are we talking further things maybe in the community college level, or even the four-year universities adapting in some way? Will those things be available?
Yeah, all those things are happening now. And what we're looking at now is parents are at a point too, I think, in talking to their kids where they're saying, they're saying, what do you want to do? How do we get you there? Right? There's some beautiful careers out there. As I was making the turn onto Mission Street on the way here to the studio, there was a truck parked with a sign in the back looking for welders and fabricators for a manufacturing company right here in Mount Pleasant. And these businesses are trying to solve their own problem. They're building their own welding schools. They're training, apprenticing their own people. We need to take our kids and give them experiences in high school at CTE programs. Specifically, my district, we have 12 school districts. 11 just voted to take our career planning certification for the Career Center, the Career Tech Center, and to create a county-wide, because they plan on going after a skilled trades millage this fall. And so they are moving forward with a Saginaw county-wide skilled trades program, to match Bay Aranac or Genesee County, both terrific programs. And young people are going to be given transportation to these facilities. It's going to open up for all of the kids of Saginaw County. In Genesee, that my portion of Genesee County, they're all already doing much of this stuff, including updating the students' a career development plan every year. They're already doing it. So this is something that for parents out there to take a look at what is the value of an education beyond high school. Number one, what are your kids learning in school, in your public school? But number two, after they're done, if they're spending $100,000, $200,000 on a degree, does that pay off for your student? If they get a certificate in welding, for example, and it could be any skilled trade, they could walk out of school zero debt, and in a job that I've talked to young people, 60, 80, 100 grand with overtime. And that's great value. And it's something they want to do. They like to work with their hands. They like to make things. We're going to create a whole bunch of new entrepreneurs. They're going to be starting businesses in their basements and garages again. So I'm really excited for Michigan students.
Along with training and in some cases, obviously, retraining a workforce to meet the changing economy, we talk about issues like infrastructure. And you mentioned how often the roads and things, I guess I would say auto insurance. If we look at overall state competitiveness umbrella, that under that, to make Michigan a competitive place in the region or nationally, that when we look at things like energy cost or our infrastructure, whether it be the roads, the rail, the cost of energy, the business tax and regulation, all those things that we can lay on the table to anybody and say, hey, Amazon too, or somebody come here and do business with us. Infrastructure-wise, let's start with the roads. There was additional money that was brought into this current cycle. What else is being done to meet this in a sustainable way to continue to try to overcome it? Because another bizarre winter season, and there's some bad conditions.
Michigan has, like other states in our latitude here, we've really gone through an extraordinary freeze-thaw cycle, and some of our roads are literally exploding, and so we're heading into another building season. People are going to be seeing a lot of orange barrels out there. We've committed an additional $1.2 billion. We did that in 2015. Last year we had our first build season with new dollars. This year we're ramping it fully into that $1.2 billion, because that was kind of phased in a little. And then we voted to add another $175 million on top of that. And so we'll start seeing the roads start getting fixed. A lot of this is the planning, the engineering that has to go into some of these roads. Some of the engineering plans have been in works, like I-75 in my district, right around Holland Road. You'll be seeing bridges torn out, new freeway put in, to widen that, to get traffic up, across the Zilwaukee Bridge and up north and back. But I had a lot of people talk to me about their subdivision roads, because once it filters down to that level, I mean, there's no trucks traffic, there's no truck traffic, there's no, there's no extraordinary miles put on that road. This is just age. And the townships need to, to have more revenue. They need to be able to match county funding that we're adding to. They need to have more say in how the roads are rebuilt. And I think part of that is the conversation that they have with their, with their county road commission and how roads are engineered. But there's a lot of work to be done yet in roads, because that's one of the things that, I'm hearing is, my taxes went up. When are you going to fix my darn roads? And the
locals too. I mean, I've got to say, are the ones that are going to turn around to Lansing and say, well, revenue sharing went down, and everybody wants more money in a paycheck, wants things paid for, an endless cycle of the age-old question: how are you going to pay for it?
And I'm all about keeping a promise and going back to the 3.9% income tax rate, at some point. But honestly, I'm not getting telephone calls in my office clamoring for a tax cut. If we do anything for average people, it's going to be dealing with the cost of car insurance. We're right now, I think it was a Northwood study that said we were maybe $1,000, $1,200 more than surrounding states on average per year. And then you take that into areas like Detroit, and my car insurance would probably quadruple if I took on a Detroit address. There are just so many problems right now with no fault the way it is. I am writing a bill right now to just set this in front of the people, a legislative ballot initiative that would say simply, our insurance would remain no fault. You would still have the option of unlimited liability. If I can afford it, I certainly want to pay for that. But the problem that I have, out in the district, and it just all hit home to me when I was pumping gas at the 7-Eleven on Washington Avenue, right across from, next to St. Mary's Hospital. I poked his head around the corner, and he said, "What are you going to do about car insurance costs?" I said, "Well, we're trying." But he's the dishwasher at the Saginaw Country Club, and he gets laid off 6 months out of the year. He said, "I shouldn't admit this to you, I drive 6 months out of the year without insurance." What do you do for somebody like him? And so while my corporate CEOs, my insurance guys, my hospital guys, they can all afford, $40,000, $50,000 vehicles. They full insurance, and they get a pretty good deal.
Well, he's one person, but he's a snapshot of a lot of people.
He is an anecdotal story, but a snapshot of a lot of people in Detroit, low-skilled workers, bartenders, dishwashers, trying to get from here to there. You got young people, they're waiting lists for lofts and apartments in Detroit. They are maintaining their Oakland County, their Macomb County residency, for the purpose of buying insurance, because it's a third or 25% of the price. And the problem for Detroit is that they can't count them in the census. And so their revenue sharing is harmed on a federal level, let alone a state level. And so how do they fix the roads and bridges, and how do they build transportation, programs, for their people, when people are not claiming to be from Detroit but love to live there, and that's really just the back end of the series of dominoes we set off in 1973 when we created a one-size-fits-all, unlimited, no-fault liability insurance. We have to be able to sell a product to you, me, to your entire team here at even the students here at CMU. They have to be able to buy an insurance that they can afford. Right, and then we have to have something to take care of innocent bystanders in an accident, pedestrians, in uninsured drivers, people from out of state. All of that has to be taken care of. Very complex system, but the bottom line is, we prohibit by force of law a person from buying an insurance that they can afford, and that has to end.
We could probably do a couple more hours just on that, given the fact that it had its roots 45 years ago. But we are going to have to leave the discussion there. But with all these things that you've been able to address with us, we certainly do appreciate the time, and we're glad that we could have you back.
Oh, it was great catching up with you.
All right, thank you. And thanks, as always, for your time and attention as well. Here on Capitol Report, we've been talking with State Senator Ken Horn from the 32nd Senate District. A reminder that, as always, these programs do go through the repeats during the week. You can check your local listings for that, and also go to our website, wcmu.org. Click on TV. You'll get to the links where all of our programs are kept up to date online as well. For all of us here, I'm David Nicholas. Have a great week, and we will talk again.